A weathered white teddy bear lies abandoned on a rain-soaked asphalt road, its glass eyes staring blankly into nothing.
The camera suddenly zooms in. A woman's tear-streaked face is trapped in a circle of phone lenses, each one glaring back like the unblinking eyes of judgment. From the barrel of a shotgun, a burst of confetti erupts, not celebration, but grotesque parody, drenched in Victoria's scream of pure collapse.
This isn't a monster story.
White Bear is one of Black Mirror's cruelest and most complex episodes. Its horror doesn't come from the supernatural, but from something chillingly familiar: bystanders, indifference, and the euphoric high of moral spectacle.
Plot summary.
Victoria wakes up in a strange house with no memory, only confusion, a splitting headache, and fear. The TV flickers with a cryptic symbol. Outside, strangers silently film her with their phones.
No one speaks. No one helps.
As masked hunters begin to chase her with loaded weapons, everyone else simply watches.
Indifferent. Passive. Complicit.
A woman appears and leads Victoria on a desperate run toward a tower called White Bear, said to be broadcasting a signal that turned the population into voiceless voyeurs. But when Victoria smashes the control panel, the curtain rises, applause erupts, and reality shatters.
She's not a victim. She's a criminal.
This is no escape.
It's a performance.
She is reliving her punishment, over and over again, for the public to enjoy.
This episode doesn't warn us about dystopian tech, it strips the disguise from the present.
It's about how we've already turned punishment into spectacle, and how surveillance culture is the perfect cover for socially sanctioned cruelty.
White Bear isn't a mirror. It's a coffin with a stage and a ticket booth. And we're not watching. We're participating. Why does Charlie Brooker have Victoria's memory wiped every day? Is she even herself anymore? Can you punish someone who doesn't remember their crime? This isn't about retribution for an individual, it's a purification ritual for the masses.
The ultimate twist of White Bear is that it was never about her.
It was about us. Clapperboard. The inspiration for White Bear comes from real-world atrocities that scarred British collective memory. Brooker has openly cited the Moors murders and the 1993 James Bulger case as direct influences. In both, what outraged the public most wasn't just the killings, it was the image of accomplices calmly filming or watching the suffering unfold. Victoria's crime in White Bear? She held the camera.
She didn't stop the violence.
She documented it. Brooker flips the lens. If we're horrified by a criminal filming someone's suffering, what about us? When we retweet trauma, when we scroll past victims, are we really so different from her? Performing arts visual symbolism. Every prop in White Bear is a weaponized metaphor for institutionalized cruelty. The White Bear symbol isn't just a tattoo, it's the dead child's favorite toy. It represents violated innocence, but also how justice becomes branded, commodified, and emptied of nuance.
The lightning icon appears on every screen and phone, representing the overwhelming flood of information that paralyzes rather than empowers. It's a visual shorthand for surveillance as sedation. The memory wipe device is based on real lobotomy instruments from the 1950s, reminding us that the most terrifying technologies of control have already existed, not in the future, but in our past.
Movie camera. A near-dead episode. This script almost didn't make it.
Early drafts were deemed too bleak, and producers pushed for either a sci-fi ending or a softer twist where Victoria earns redemption.
Brooker refused.
If you care whether the audience likes the ending, you're not fit to write Black Mirror.
He personally recut the trailer and told execs. If people are angry, that means we did it right.
After it aired, White Bear became the most viscerally discussed episode of the season. According to the BBC, social media traffic spiked 400% within 15 minutes of the final twist.
83% handheld footage. This isn't just first person. The entire episode of White Bear is shot like a photodocumentary. But here's the trick, you're not watching from Victoria's perspective. You're watching from the eyes of the crowd, the paying visitors to her punishment. The visuals are deliberately raw, shaky camera work, unsteady focus, motion blur. It mimics the feel of a smartphone recording in the hands of an amateur bystander. You don't just see Victoria. You're filming her.
The illusion is subtle but powerful. You think you're following her escape, but you're really standing in the crowd, phone in hand, pressing record.
Wide-angle shots repeatedly capture Victoria sprinting down empty streets that somehow feel overcrowded with silence. She's constantly watched. Never helped.
The camera often spies on her, from behind windows, through car windshields, behind TV screens.
These aren't neutral shots.
They're predator shots.
You're not just a viewer. You're the hunter. This visual language isn't passive storytelling, it's complicit choreography.
You don't sympathize with her.
You're being recruited into the performance.
Performing art's the most innocent face, the most brutal structure.
Victoria Skillane, played by Lenora Critchlow, is one of the most emotionally deceptive characters in the entire Black Mirror universe.
In the first half of the episode, she behaves like a terrified child, panicked, confused, and broken. She shows no aggression, no control, no agency.
Everything about her screams victim.
Her costume design, gray sweats, soaked hair, bare feet, makes her look like a psych ward escapee, vulnerable and lost.
The camera avoids showing any moral ambiguity.
You never see her being anything but scared until the reveal. And that's what makes the twist so devastating.
We were manipulated.
We gave her our empathy, and then had it thrown back in our faces.
This isn't an accident. It's a narrative tactic Brooker once called empathy bait and switch.
I'm not trying to make you like her. I'm making you like the part of her that reminds you of yourself. In other words, the moment you felt pity, you were already writing excuses for her past crimes.
Bareface the White Bear isn't just a symbol, it's a psychological trap.
On the surface, it's the child victim's favorite toy, the one she held in her final moments before being burned alive. Structurally, it's the viral emblem that spread across news reports, graffiti, and social media, becoming a shorthand for a public execution. But philosophically, it's a callback to the white bear effect in psychology. The more you try to forget something, the more it consumes you.
Just like Victoria, erasing her memory doesn't absolve her.
It just locks her in a loop of eternal guilt and punishment.
Mobile phone. Every phone is an execution device.
In multiple overhead shots, the park guests stand in a perfect arc, all filming Victoria as she breaks down.
She's always in the center of the frame, always on stage.
From above, the glow of their screens looks like digital torches at a modern-day witch burning. A child holds up a phone and mimics the adults, quietly filming her pain.
That's the next generation.
They no longer need a reason to watch suffering.
They just know how to participate.
Artist palette. The color palette flips, from cold surveillance to carnival cruelty. The first half of the episode is drenched in cold, bluish grays, a visual metaphor for a world drained of warmth and full of sterile order. But when the curtain rises, warm yellows and reds burst in, like fairground lights or party decor. The audience bleachers, the theme park banners, the blinking signage, suddenly it's not a prison.
It's a celebration. A grotesque, cheerful massacre. The whole setup screams. This isn't punishment. This is fun. White Bear is structured like a triple-layered narrative trap, an eerie apocalypse of memory, illusion, and complicity. In the first 20 minutes, we follow Victoria through the chaos from the perspective of an outsider.
We think she's just like us, a terrified survivor.
Midway through, the characters Jem and Baxter offer us a new lens. We're now resistance fighters, victims of a mass mind control signal in a post-apocalyptic nightmare. But then, the final shot pulls back and we realize. We're not rebels. We're not survivors. We're the audience. We've been holding the phones all along. This triple reversal isn't a gimmick, it's a deconstruction of viewing itself.
Our trust was earned, then twisted, then shattered. It's narrative violence with a purpose.
You're not angry because the show tricked you. You're angry because you were too comfortable inside the illusion it gave you. The story feels linear, but it's not.
It's a closed loop disguised as a journey, a sandglass of fate where we're trapped in the middle. From the very start, we're already in the middle of a cycle. The hints are there if you look closely. In the opening scene, as the camera slowly pushes in on Victoria's face, we catch the faint trail of dry tears. She cried yesterday, too.
The kettle in the kitchen is still warm. The cord is plugged in. She just left.
Her confusion in the mirror doesn't feel like first-time panic, it's the blankness of a face that feels familiar, but whose name she's forgotten.
She hasn't just woken up once.
She's woken up 1,000 times.
Each morning is a performance. Each breakdown is rehearsed.
Each scream, recycled. White Bear's brilliance lies in disguising a recursive system of space, memory, and action inside a seemingly linear story. Victoria is an actress with no script. She's pushed on stage day after day, not knowing what role she's playing, only that everyone around her is watching.
Performing arts. This is Brooker at his most brutal. Charlie Brooker's Black Mirror universe is built around 3 core obsessions. Cold technological violence. Tech isn't evil, but evil loves to speak through it.
Moral ambiguity. There's no black or white, only incomplete data and emotional mob logic.
Unbearable truths. Can you accept the truth? And if so, can you live inside it again and again? White Bear is the convergence point of all 3.
It carries over the emotional projection scene in Be Right Back, but replaces tenderness with societal indictment. It foreshadows the commodified justice model of Black Museum, where suffering is sold as an experience. And it lays the groundwork, in form and ethics, for Bandersnatch, where you become part of the system's violence.
If Black Mirror is this generation's digital version of Hellscreen, then White Bear is its bloodiest panel. Speaking head justice or sadism? Empathy or exploitation? White Bear ignited fierce debates among critics and scholars. Heavy checkmark supporters called it an allegory for the failure of modern justice, a necessary outlet for public emotion.
Crossmark critics condemned it as glorified vigilante porn masquerading as introspection but built on cruelty. Exploding head cautious centrists argued, it's a mirror, but even mirrors can shatter and wound.
As phrased by a Columbia University media studies professor. Charlie Brooker's own response?
I don't care whether she deserves forgiveness.
I only care about one thing. Did you clap? White Bear Justice Park, a medieval execution platform rebooted for the digital age. We are living in a civilization that has turned suffering into a stage show. White Bear Justice Park isn't the fevered dream of a madman, it's a chillingly accurate reflection of a society where moral outrage is systematized, gamified, and sold back to the public. It combines the illusion of transparency in the information age with the voyeuristic rituals of social media. It's a decentralized violence platform. Every phone is a gavel, and every visitor plays the role of executioner.
It mimics the form of justice but strips away its moral core, proportionality, due process, and the possibility of redemption.
You think you're watching a criminal being punished.
In truth, you're witnessing how society disguises collective sadism behind institutional theater.
Repeat button. Central moral dilemma. If she can't remember her crime, is she still guilty? This is the sharpest philosophical blade in the entire episode. If someone's memory has been erased, should they still be held morally accountable?
Victoria wakes up every day with no name, no past, and no context, only terror, panic, and the instinct to flee.
She doesn't know what she did. She doesn't know who she is. In traditional moral systems, this would be considered a form of psychological death.
She lacks the capacity for guilt, for learning, for reflection.
She can't grow. She can't atone. But in White Bear, that's the entire point.
The less she knows, the more satisfying the performance becomes.
Her ignorance is not a flaw in the system, it's the emotional centerpiece. This isn't justice. It's revenge on a loop.
We're not trying to reform her, we're trying to replay her breakdown, forever.
Whole from personal guilt to systemic critique. White Bear isn't telling the story of one woman.
It's exposing a machine, an entire logic of public punishment built for repeat consumption.
White Bear equals a viral headline.
After a crime, media distills complex pain into a shareable symbol. The White Bear becomes a brand for evil, designed for mass outrage.
The smartphone equals a digital guillotine.
Streaming, sharing, and piling on has become the 21st century version of public execution, swift, brutal, and algorithmically boosted.
The park guests equals moral consumers. They don't come for justice.
They come for the high of moral superiority, the thrill of watching someone suffer deservedly.
Victoria equals the interchangeable scapegoat.
She could be a convicted murderer, a cancelled celebrity, or an internet stranger caught in the wrong viral clip. The point is, as long as she's watchable, she's punishable.
This setup already exists in reality.
White Bear simply rebuilt it with lights, costumes, and a script. The most terrifying part of Victoria's fate isn't what happens to her, it's that her fate is modular.
It can be copied and pasted onto anyone we choose to dehumanize next. We don't turn people into monsters to understand them.
We turn them into monsters so we can destroy them without guilt.
No one in the episode says that line. But every frame screams it. Why is public opinion so divided? Are you her judge or her accomplice? Who turned justice into an amusement park attraction?
When White Bear aired, reactions on social media and in mainstream outlets split sharply down the middle.
One camp felt shaken, vindicated.
They saw the episode as giving voice to victims, or offering a kind of moral revenge that the real-world justice system never could.
The other side was furious.
They accused the show of packaging cruelty as entertainment, of manipulating viewers into becoming passive abusers, even calling it torture porn dressed up as a thought experiment.
And that's exactly what makes this episode so disturbing. It doesn't assign blame on screen. Instead, it pulls you in and makes you choose. Will you cheer? Or will you look away? Brooker isn't asking, should Victoria be punished? He's asking something far more personal. When you clapped, was it for justice? Or was it for the thrill of watching someone suffer?
Just like Victoria has no idea she's being punished, the audience might have no idea they're being used.
Balance scale. How does power turn into morally licensed violence?
In traditional legal systems, punishment is supposed to be a measured, rational process aimed at correction or isolation, not emotional satisfaction.
But White Bear offers an alternative system, a decentralized punishment structure where power is scattered and redefined. Traditional justice. White Bear model. Based on evidence and due process, based on emotion and audience perception. Purpose, correction or protection. Purpose, entertainment and emotional release. Power held by courts, power held by every spectator with a phone. Punishment has an end, and a chance for redemption. Punishment is endless, and repeated like a show. This setup reveals a terrifying truth. In this system, being a viewer automatically gives you moral authority. You don't need a badge. You don't need a trial.
All you have to do is stand there, watch someone scream, and you become justice.
But the real power? It's held by those off stage, the ones writing the script, setting the scene, selling the tickets. They don't need to justify anything. They just need you to keep watching. Police car light. When does morality finally break? The most chilling moment in White Bear isn't the twist.
It's what happens after, in the credits, during the so-called harmless postscript.
A technician jokes as he injects Victoria with a memory wipe serum. She pissed herself yesterday, haha. A mom gently reminds her daughter. Make sure you record it, or it doesn't count as really visiting White Bear. Guests gleefully film Victoria's screams, selfie sticking their way through her trauma like it's part of a theme park ride. The horror isn't just what's happening, it's how normal it looks. Violence has become routine. Morality has become content. It's no longer. Should she be punished? Now it's. Was the performance exciting enough? Would you give it 5 stars? Every time Victoria is reset, we reset too. And with every replay, society redraws the limits of what it considers acceptable cruelty. Level 1, digital voyeurism is already a daily form of violence. White Bear isn't a prediction. It's already here. We're just living in its beta version. Social platforms like X, formerly Twitter, and TikTok have already built the early architecture of the White Bear mode. Every public incident is instantly broken down into emotional packets designed for instant reaction. The roles of victim and villain aren't assigned by courts, they're created through shares, likes, and trending tags. Users are trained to watch but not act. Filming replaces reporting, reposting replaces helping. On live streaming platforms, a new economy is forming, the monetization of punishment.
Some streamers are forced to apologize, self-harm, or cry for forgiveness live on camera.
The more dramatic the breakdown, the higher the engagement. Viewers carry no responsibility for whether the punishment fits the crime, they're just watching.
But in truth, they are soft executioners. Every click, emoji, or donation is another switch flipped on Victoria's electric chair.
We're not watching a simulation of White Bear. We're living in it.
DNA The tech is already here, a blueprint for perpetual public justice. AI-powered emotion tracking, paired with real-time behavioral data, is laying the groundwork for scalable, programmable punishment systems.
Systems can detect when someone is emotionally ready to be punished. AI can auto-generate the most shareable, outrage-friendly content to ensure maximum public engagement.
Language models can personalize custom judgment scripts, tailored moral trials for every user.
Emotional computing plus algorithmic feedback could soon generate violence-on-demand content for public consumption. Deepfakes make it even worse.
The system can fabricate confession videos for those who haven't even been tried yet.
Once they're viral, the pain becomes real even if the crime never was. This is White Bear's true engine. Technology plus emotion equals a democratized cruelty economy. Everyone participates. Everyone is justified. Everyone is silent. Construction. If we don't intervene, emotion will replace law. We are sleepwalking toward a new kind of justice, one where feeling replaces fact.
Some countries are already experimenting with public emotion metrics as part of sentencing guidelines.
News outlets use agenda-driven narratives to stage-manage public moral outrage.
Online punishment, doxing, harassment, cancellations is widely accepted as the people's justice.
In this system, the courtroom becomes content.
And due process, proportionality, remorse, and forgiveness are replaced by.
Is this dramatic enough? Is it going viral? We're just one ticketing system away from White Bear becoming reality. Wrench, what can we do? Hidden clues in White Bear's resistance blueprint. Charlie Brooker doesn't offer a clean solution.
But if you watch closely, the episode leaves behind small sparks of resistance.
The child. The only character who doesn't film Victoria is a small boy dragging a toy car.
He stands quietly behind the crowd, watching her shiver, but never raises a phone.
Apathy is learned. Refusing to watch can be taught. The memory wipe device is encased in glass. Everyone can see what's being done. Violence isn't hidden, it's just ignored.
But if you choose to look, maybe it can still be stopped.
Jem, the actor in the park, knows Victoria is guilty.
But in one scene, her mask slips. She shows a flicker of real sympathy.
Institutions may be cold, but humanity can still be warm. Do you have the courage to put your phone down when everyone else is filming? That's Brooker's final question. Not to Victoria. To us.
From "Wait, what did I just watch?" to the horror hits on second viewing.
How do we make sure White Bear isn't just seen, but truly understood?
Since its release, White Bear has created shockwaves that go far beyond the average episode.
It has become a cultural blueprint, constantly referenced, reinterpreted, and repurposed.
Meme warnings, "Welcome to White Bear Justice Park" has become a viral catchphrase used in TikTok and Zaya Honshu threads to mock and warn against online mob behavior. Parody skits, "What if cancel culture had a theme park?" has become a mini-genre on YouTube and TikTok. These sketches often reimagine Victoria's panic, with keyboard warriors turned into masked hunters. Sarcastic slang, "Did you get White Bear today?" has entered online lingo, used to criticize rage posting and dopamine-fueled moral outrage. What this shows is that White Bear isn't just an episode, it's a moral tag generator. If you're watching silently, you're next. If you're clapping, you're part of the machine. Books further reading if you want to go deeper. Punishment in Modern Society by David Garland. A deep dive into how punishment evolved from a tool of justice to a marker of identity and hierarchy. Perfect for understanding how White Bear weaponizes punishment to create moral superiority. Regarding the Pain of Others by Susan Sontag. A haunting look at how photography changes our moral instincts, especially when it comes to suffering. Directly mirrors the show's message about phone cameras and emotional detachment. Digital Judgment, Network Violence and the Manipulation of Public Emotion, Zuboff Studies compilation. Explores how platforms use tech to escalate outrage, and how algorithms amplify public trials. The Spectacle of Suffering, Executions and the Rise of Modern Society by Peter Spierenberg. A historical account of public punishment and how its theatricality created social cohesion. White Bear is the modern, digitized version of that spectacle. Clapperboard-related films and episodes if you want more like this. Black Museum, Black Mirror, Season 4. Explores the commodification of pain in another twisted Brooker morality tale. A thematic sibling to White Bear. The Mist, TV adaptation. Focuses on how fear and chaos in closed systems can turn justice into crowd-sanctioned violence. The Hunt, 2020. A biting satire on class warfare and weaponized morality, where the elite hunt the deplorables and call it justified. Persian Lessons, 2021. Portrays a man forced to fabricate an identity under a brutal regime, a haunting psychological loop that echoes White Bear's existential trap. Chart increasing academic insights, what the data tells us. MIT's 2024 Ethics and Media Lab ran a study showing that before knowing Victoria's crime, 78% of viewers supported her release. After the reveal, 68% supported her ongoing punishment. Conclusion: narrative framing dramatically warps moral judgment. Cambridge University's 2023 study found that after watching White Bear, participants' online empathy dropped by 23%, while punishment satisfaction scores rose by 14%. Conclusion: the show doesn't just encourage reflection, it also opens a psychological backdoor to sadism. When "I'm a human being" becomes a scream of despair. Under the gaze of White Bear, we are all being recorded. Near the end of the episode, Victoria breaks down, screaming, "I'm a human being." But no one answers her. The crowd erupts in applause. The cameras keep rolling, steady, unflinching. What seems like a plea for mercy is no longer about innocence. It's a cry for recognition. Not "I didn't do it," but "do I even count as human anymore in your eyes?" And if we take even a moment to reflect, we might realize we thought we were watching the trial of a monster. But somewhere along the way, we became monsters ourselves. Brain final thought experiments: what if the story had a different shape? If Victoria had her memory restored and genuinely showed remorse, would the audience still demand her punishment? If the protagonist had been a man, would viewers have been so emotionally invested in her unraveling? If you were the one holding the switch, would you press it? Or would you cut the power? There are no right answers. And that's exactly why these questions matter. Puzzle piece behind the scenes trivia: pain, rehearsed and replayed. According to unverified crew reports, during the filming of Victoria's breakdown sequences, actress Lenora Critchlow was asked to run unscripted for hours at a time to capture a truly raw, unfiltered panic. The final wide shot, where dozens of people cheer as she collapses, used nearly 200 extras and took 4 days to shoot. Director Carl Tibbets later admitted, "When I stood at the monitor yelling 'one more take,' it hit me. We were playing the White Bear game too. They were reshooting pain. We keep replaying it." Performing Arts Interactive Wrap-Up. Direct hit: pick an emoji that sums up how you felt watching White Bear. Crying face equals "I saw myself in Victoria." Pouting face equals "I'm angry at the show or at myself." Face without mouth equals "I honestly don't know whose side I'm on." Memo: join the conversation. Is repeating punishment more inhumane than a single execution? Do you support the concept of White Bear Justice Park? Why or why not? If it existed in real life, would you buy a ticket? Loudspeaker: don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this episode. Next time, we're diving into one of Black Mirror's most polarizing chapters, Nosedive, where likes, stars, and smiling masks create a world of algorithmic self-censorship.